Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We need to hunker down and stay local.
Zoned in. What BC's new travel restrictions mean for you. Also,
I'm thankful to God, we came back. Everybody is so happy.
last plane out. Passengers on now banned flights from COVID-ravaged India arrive in Vancouver. And the posh West Vancouver Club and the local pharmacy. Their private plan to vaccinate members and staff.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Do you need to go or do you just want to go? That is effectively what BC's new travel restrictions come down to. And tonight, an order is in place that formally bans non-essential travel between health regions. As Tanya Fletcher reports, it's part of the government's plan to try to curb COVID-19.
The time has come to formally restrict non-essential travel.
And so BC has effectively been split up into 3 zones based on health authorities. Fraser Health and Vancouver Coastal will be considered one combined region. Interior and Northern Health will also be their own bubble. Vancouver Island essentially remains the same.
While this order doesn't stop someone from traveling large distances within their own region, from Merritt to Nelson or Abbotsford to Squamish, for example, that doesn't mean that these trips should be happening.
Sea to Sky communities are formally asking Lower Mainlanders to stay away, even though they can still technically travel there without repercussion. To enforce the new order, police are to conduct periodic checkpoints. Anyone traveling outside their own area is subject to a $575 ticket. Essential travel is allowed, and the reasons are many, including going to work, going to school, accessing childcare, attending a medical appointment, or attending a funeral, and the list goes on. Also effective now, BC Ferries will limit sailings and restrict recreational trips. Even before noon, passengers were being screened with questions before boarding.
When I got to the ticket booth, she did ask me why I was traveling. So I said I was going to retrieve my daughter from university and bring her home. So she said when I got over to the island that I may not be able to come back.
But much to her relief, her trip is in fact exempt from the new travel ban. Under the new restrictions, hospitality operators like hotels are to cancel non-local bookings, and new signage will go up along the BC-Alberta border discouraging non-essential travel. While the formalized orders provide some more specifics, it's still too ambiguous for those tasked with enforcing it.
The pragmatic idea of determining, who's in a car, what their ID is, what their address is, and where they're going, and whether or not that doctor's appointment that they talk about is legitimate or not. There are a lot of just pragmatic questions that would need to be answered that nobody knows an answer to yet.
That union represents 7,000 RCMP officers across BC. Days ago, they sent a letter to the minister outlining their concerns and asking for a meeting. The minister confirms he did receive the letter, but the two sides have yet to meet. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
Now, those travel restrictions are in effect through the May-long weekend, as is a ban on flights to and from Canada and COVID-ravaged India and Pakistan. As John Hernandez reports, some health experts question how effective the ban will be, given that a variant of the deadly virus has already arrived here in BC.
The last 2 flights from India both touched down in Vancouver at 7 a.m. this morning. Many of the passengers on board caught wind of the impending travel ban just hours before they took flight.
This one last flight, so I'm very lucky.
This is the right thing that they did. India is at red zone now.
I'm thankful to God, we came back. Everybody is so happy.
This was their last chance to come home for at least a month. The federal government banned flights to keep cases from seeping into Canada. India is reporting more than 300,000 COVID-19 infections per day as the more contagious B.1.617 double mutant variant circulates through the country.
It just is a very challenging time in India right now, and we hope that they're able to manage that as soon as possible. But we are very supportive of this move by the federal government. It's something that we've been advising on nationally.
A move that has left some British Columbians stranded.
We are hoping that the flights will resume after a month.
It's deja vu for Surrey resident Mohit Danju, whose father is now stuck in India after visiting for a business trip. Last year, his wife and daughter were stranded there when the country went into lockdown.
I talk to him in the morning, talk to him in the evening. I tell him, don't meet anyone. Just do the maximum business over the phone.
But some health experts question just how far the measures will go. Dozens of cases of the Indian strain have already been identified in BC.
Whether it's going to prevent its spread in Canada itself, it's unclear.
UBC's Dr. Srinivas Murthy says what Canada really needs is tighter quarantines.
We do know that border measures work at reducing import of new strains, but there are other things we can do at the border, such as a more enforced mandatory quarantine, which we haven't really been doing very well over these past number of months.
Months that have seen the number of variants in BC climb to alarming highs. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
And later in this newscast, we'll have more on Canadians in India and Pakistan trying to get home and the arguments against the effectiveness of the travel ban. Well, some encouraging news tonight as the number of patients in hospital in BC with COVID-19 has dipped slightly. Still, BC has recorded another 1,000 new cases of the virus today. There are now 486 people hospitalized, 160 of those in critical care. Sadly, 4 more people have died of the virus. An additional 41,000 people have now been immunized with a COVID vaccine. And starting today, everyone 18 years and older is formally eligible to register for their shot, although anyone has actually been able to register for several weeks now. To a CBC News exclusive tonight, the provincial government has stepped in and canceled a pop-up vaccine clinic planned by an exclusive country club in West Vancouver. It comes after the club emailed members offering them doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Our Dan Burrett joins us now live with details on this. Dan, a very quick about-face on this today.
Indeed, Mike. CBC News obtained an email sent yesterday from the CEO of the Hollyburn Country Club, 2 members offering some of them a chance to get vaccinated. Hollyburn is a private sports facility and club described on its website as, quote, a private hub for activity, sport, dining, entertainment, socialization, and business. Initiation fees are around $40,000. In the email, CEO Ed McLaughlin said specific members could call and book a vaccine by providing some personal information and a club ID number. We understand that there are long wait lists for COVID-19 vaccines in our local communities, the letter says. To offer some of our members a convenient way to get the AstraZeneca vaccine, we have organized a pop-up clinic at Hollyburn. Now, the plan was to have Indigo Pharmacy on site on Monday, offering first doses for members aged 40 to 65. After CBC News contacted the club, Hollyburn canceled it. Ed McLaughlin saying to CBC News, they had partnered with a local pharmacy to provide vaccinations to our eligible frontline staff and had also explored making this available to eligible club members. Upon receiving advice from the health authority, we will not be providing this service through the club. BC's health ministry was more blunt. This is unacceptable, it says in a statement today. We canceled the clinic and won't be providing any further COVID-19 vaccines to this pharmacy. So the clinic is over less than a day after that first email, Mike.
Yeah, okay, Dan. Well, what's the pharmacy having to say about all of this?
First of all, Indigo Pharmacy is based in Fraser Health, not Coastal Health like Hollyburn is. A pharmacist at Indigo's store in New Westminster tells CBC News they had set up flu shot clinics at Hollyburn before and contacted the club when it received AstraZeneca doses. Ken Lee says his pharmacy doesn't have the space needed to properly distance people after they've been vaccinated, and he had reached out to patients on the North Shore to tell them about the pop-up clinic, though he didn't advertise it widely. As of today, its website says it didn't have any more AstraZeneca doses available. Lee tells CBC News, we had no intention of offering the vaccines only to an exclusive group. The intentions were much more innocent than that. And if the intent was to be exclusive, every dose would have gone to Hollyburn. Now, no doses will go to the private club. You can read much more on this story from our reporter Michelle Gassoub on our website, cbc.ca/BC. Mike.
Dan, thank you very much. Dan Burrett with us live tonight. And the Corduroy Lounge in Vancouver's Kitsilano area is violating public health orders again tonight appearing to allow people to dine inside.
Class A citizen here, guys.
CBC News received video from a neighboring establishment that appears to show people inside the restaurant. Corduroy's Instagram page shows they plan tonight's gathering to rally against BC restrictions and their impact on small businesses. Their business license was suspended earlier this month for violating orders and ignoring closure notices. BC extended indoor dining restrictions until the end of May. On Vancouver's downtown east side, community transmissions have dropped significantly since a targeted vaccine rollout began there. One doctor says achieving herd immunity will ease the burden for programs dealing with the overdose crisis.
The vaccination works and that we have been able to achieve significant herd immunity in the downtown east side so that people will feel safe to return to the services that they need.
The majority of downtown east side residents have now been vaccinated. The health authority set up clinics and mobile tents near crowded areas and launched an outreach campaign in SRO buildings. Well, people as young as 30 should be offered the AstraZeneca vaccine unless some medical condition creates a potential risk. That's today's new advice from the Council on Immunization. But as Susanna Da Silva shows us, making more people eligible is also a good way to drive up demand.
All the people that are approved.
After a post on social media, word spread like wildfire and people came by the dozens for a chance to just walk in for a shot of the AstraZeneca vaccine without the usual appointment.
I got a text from a friend to say come down and dropped everything and came down.
Pent-up demand after the province dropped the age limit to 40. And today, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization said it can go even lower.
The AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine may be offered to individuals 30 years of age and older without contraindications if the individual does not wish to wait for an mRNA vaccine and the benefits outweigh the risk.
The risk is that the vaccine can trigger extremely rare blood clots. The first 2 cases in Ontario were reported today, bringing the total in the country to 5, a small risk compared to the much greater likelihood of catching COVID.
People will need to look at how worried they are about COVID, how much COVID there is in the community.
They also wanted to make sure no one who waited was put at the back of the list for Pfizer or Moderna.
This is the guidance that says this is the vaccines we have, and this is what we know about these vaccines. And so as a public messaging strategy, it's a tricky needle to thread.
And in the end, the messaging may not matter. Alberta and Ontario say they won't be lowering the age of eligibility because they don't have enough. And officials in BC say all the doses they have are spoken for.
We have literally 319 people on our waiting list right now, and we would love to give them the vaccine. We love vaccines in arms, but we don't have the stock to do it right now.
I'm pretty emotional.
But today, these people got lucky.
Thank you.
Officials scrambled to find dwindling supplies. The next Canadian shipment likely won't arrive until June. Susanna Da Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
A man hiking on a trail near Nelson says he had a terrifying encounter with a cougar this week. He was alone and 3 hours away from any help. As Mira Baines reports, he was able to escape unharmed and managed to take video of the big cat.
Go away! Hey!
Through the trees, a cougar stared him down. Cody McLaughlin says he took out his camera to record it in case the worst happened.
I was yelling and screaming at it and waving my arms up in the air, and it didn't care at all. It just kept coming towards me. I felt hopeless, and it was terrifying for sure.
McLaughlin was walking along popular Flagpole Trail just outside Nelson. Near the summit, he realized he was being tracked.
I was walking by a pine tree, and a cougar leaped out at me, and it was right at my feet and hissing at me and stuff, and then we both backed away from each other.
After a stare down, the cougar left. But 20 minutes further down the trail, the big cat appeared again and suddenly charged at him.
So I threw the rock at it when it was 10 feet away from me. It continued to charge me, and luckily there was a big stick beside me, so I picked up the big stick and I whacked it in the head.
The animal backed off, and McLaughlin says he continued cautiously down the trail. He saw the cougar a third time, but it stayed away. People don't always report these interactions because they don't want the animals destroyed, but experts say they should.
What can happen is if we don't call and let people know that there's unusual behavior happening, that more encounters will happen and someone can get hurt and the situation can escalate. And then there's no choice but to remove that animal.
Go!
After his encounter, McLaughlin called 911 and conservation officers met him along the trail. The BC Conservation Officer Service has recommended closing the trail to the public for 2 weeks and plan to reassess the situation.
That I'll be bringing bear spray with me from now on, no matter what, like even if I just go on a short hike. Yeah, there he is.
He hopes he'll never have a close call again. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canada's highest court has ruled an Indigenous First Nation in the BC interior is not extinct. The decision upends the federal government's 65-year-old claim that the Siniyak Nation no longer exists. Its reservation is actually south of us in Washington state. As Bob Keating reports tonight, the court has constitutionally protected the rights of Native Americans to hunt in their ancestral territory north of the border.
There really is no precedent for what happened today. An American First Nation declared extinct in Canada 65 years ago essentially reverses that designation. The case began when the Siniyak sent American hunter Rick Desautels into BC to hunt an elk and start a fight. Desautels and Siniyaks maintained they were pushed off their traditional territory in British Columbia and onto a reservation in Washington state. 80% of their home territory, they argue, is in BC. And to drive that point home, Desautels crossed the border and shot that elk near Castlegar just over a decade ago. The Siniyaks won at every level in BC court, and now the Supreme Court of Canada has validated that, making them the first nation of record in the West Kootenay, essentially reversing that declaration of extinction. It's believed to be a first anywhere. The Siniyaks, who are 3,500 strong in the U.S., are thrilled and now have rights in Canada. They also have a lot of work to do, building a nation in Canada from the U.S., and the uncomfortable questions that undoubtedly is going to raise. Bob Keating, CBC News, Vancouver.
Johanna Wagstaffe here now with the first check of the forecast. Just kind of a dull day today, but we knew it was coming, right?
We knew it was coming, that's right. Yeah, it was sort of weird to see the white skies after 13 days of blue skies. Yeah, a little ominous to start, but they were just clouds. And we've got the showers knocking on our door now. Take a look at the radar. They are beginning to cross the island. The radar is picking up. You can see in the green some showers crossing the island. Not all of that is hitting the ground. It was quite dry. So Sunshine Coast, you may be seeing a few showers. Same story all the way through to Bowen Island. But a better chance if you wait a couple of hours for that rain to fill in across Metro Vancouver. It is going to come down steady at times through your Saturday. The center of low will actually cross through Metro Vancouver. So look for some gusty winds, cooler temperatures, and a washout of a Saturday. And this low pressure system will actually cross through the BC interior as well, dropping snow levels to about 600 meters. We've got some fresh snow for the mountain ranges and even possibility of some wet snow out towards the Kootenays through the weekend. Right now, we've got a 13 at YVR. We are at seasonal for the first time again in about 13 days. Tomorrow's highs notably lower. That cooler air will have us struggling to get much past 10 or 11 degrees across Metro Vancouver. There's the low pressure system swinging inland. I do see the low pressure system lingering a little longer, Mike, through Sunday. So I'll take you through the back end of the weekend. It's an interesting Sunday, and we've got some sunshine next week. Those details coming up.
I look forward to that. Okay, Joe, talk to you in a bit. Thanks very much.
Sounds good.
And a reminder, if you're not already, you can also watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Another horrifying day in India. Record infections, record hospitalizations, and new problems. A lack of oxygen and a scramble for beds and staff. We will have the latest from India next. Just coming up on 6:19. Thanks for staying with us tonight during our commercial-free live stream. Well, a man on PEI has become quite well known on the island for walking miles or even kilometers along the road, collecting bottles and cans. And the money he gets for them goes to help children a very long way from home. Have a look.
I lost my wife 9 years ago, and just finding the time long, so I'm doing quite a bit of walking, and I was seeing all these bottles and cans and stuff along the sides of the road and stuff, but I wasn't bothering with picking them up or anything. My son had said to me one day, "Why don't you give them bottles and cans to Peter and Corrine for their program they have?"
My wife Karina and myself were retired school teachers. When we retired/retreaded, we started doing a lot of work overseas with Habitat for Humanity. He came out to a presentation that my wife and I did and said, I want to do something, and so you've seen what the results of that are, which is absolutely incredible.
Well, I started about the middle of March to collect them, and there's about 8,000 of my own and stuff, and around 3,000 in the bags there that's been donated by people who brought them and left them at my door and stuff. A lot of legwork, a lot of walking, a lot of in and out the ditches, and stuff, picking, The cans, Peter and Green comes and picks them up, and stuff once a month, and they go to the depots, and then the money goes to school there in Zambia.
It's a different life. These kids have faced some hard times and continue to face hard times, and many of them are orphans, and this might be the only meal that they get during the day. So Bobby has been a huge, huge, huge part of this, and I know they think the world of him over there.
1 glass bottle or 2 cans or 2 plastic bottles, 10 cents provides a breakfast for a child.
It's been amazing. We've been able to provide the food for the children, and we've also been able in these times to send money for COVID supplies as well too, whether that's masks, hand sanitizers, washing stations for the school and the surrounding area actually as well, because the kids wouldn't be allowed to come to school without that.
Get some exercise out of it and clean up the environment a little bit and feed some children breakfast. Gives you a good feeling to know that you're helping and they appreciate it.
Good for him. Nice to see that on Prince Edward Island tonight. Okay, coming up, lots of news from India, Pakistan, a dire situation there, record case numbers and hospitalizations, and we'll have more on the travel ban that affects Canada as well. Right now, though, here's a live shot at 6:21. Port of Vancouver on this Friday night as we head into a cloudy weekend, at least for the first half of it. Canada's new 30-day ban on passenger flights to and from India and Pakistan is now in effect. The stricter travel rule comes as more cases of a highly transmissible variant of interest, first detected in India, are reported here. Here's Jacqueline Hansen tonight with more on the flight ban and what it means for travelers.
Tina Sethi flew to India 12 days ago to be with her father after he fell and broke his femur and hip.
He's a very strong person, but this time he was emotionally very weak and he wanted me by his side.
When Canada announced a travel ban, she couldn't fly home to her husband and children in Calgary. She was still in quarantine.
Even if I wanted, I could not leave ASAP. My quarantine ends on Sunday. I don't know what to say now. I'm stuck.
In Toronto, Gautam Chhabak considers himself lucky. He got a seat on one of the last flights to make sure he could be here to start college.
I booked the flight as soon as possible.
He and others left a grim reality behind in India.
These situations are really, really, really worse. The people are actually dying on the streets.
Cases are soaring and the country can't keep up. Hospital beds, medicine, and oxygen all in short supply. Plus, the B.1.617 variant strain is spreading. Canada's actions are intended to contain it, but it's already on the move.
What you have to do is really treat the whole world during a global pandemic as one big hotspot.
Kelly Lee has been tracking global travel measures and their effectiveness since the pandemic began. She says targeted travel bans aren't the answer. Instead, it's key to screen, quarantine, and test every traveler. And while Canada does have some measures in place,
it's really a patchwork of measures. And so we have different treatment of people depending on whether they're arriving by air, land, or sea. Some say, it's like a Swiss cheese, that you have so many holes in the system that we're not actually treating everyone in a thorough way.
There's also concern Canada's latest ban could result in backlash and racism towards the South Asian community.
To outright ban, it just sends out a message to the community that, this one particular country, is having things out of control.
For Seti, despite feeling helpless, she still believes that traveling to see her father was the right choice.
You don't want to regret your entire life that, he wanted to see you when you were not there when he wanted to see you.
Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
And India is struggling to cope with the demands of treating patients with COVID-19. Hospitals are running out of oxygen, drug supplies, and space to treat patients. As freelance journalist Neha Punia reports tonight from New Delhi, some people are being treated outside or turned away.
India is now the epicenter of the global COVID-19 outbreak. For the second day in a row, India has recorded more than 300,000 cases, and its death count is also increased by a staggering number. But there are concerns that many regions of the country are underreporting their COVID-19 deaths. Crematoriums are now working round the clock, even as they work to expand capacity, saying they've run out of space in the last few weeks. This even as India's healthcare facilities are at breaking point, and many in the country are now dying not because of COVID-19, but because they cannot access basic medical care. Here in Delhi, at least 8 hospitals have complained of acute oxygen shortage. You have one hospital on Friday that confirmed that 25 people died because oxygen supplies were at dangerously low levels. Many hospitals are now turning patients away, saying they can no longer accommodate any more people because their supplies are simply insufficient. There have been reports of regional governments hoarding oxygen supplies as well as preventing their interstate transit. The Indian Air Force has also been pressed into service. They've been carrying oxygen tankers to different parts of the country. But on Friday, you had another tragedy coming to light from Maharashtra, which is the country's worst hit region, where a dozen people died because of a fire in a COVID-19 facility. Initial reports suggest there was a spark in the air conditioning unit. Many people are asking, as this tragedy's human cost is mounting, why India wasn't better prepared, despite experts having warned for months now that India's second wave of infections would be far more devastating than anything the country has seen so far. Neha Punia for CBC News, New Delhi.
Back here in Canada, Ontario has become the 4th province to prioritize vaccinating women. Vicadopia looks into the emerging data that led doctors to recommend the move.
Conspicuously absent from vaccine lineups in BC, those who are pregnant. It's an anxious time to be expecting. Sherry Farzaneh doesn't know when she'll get her shot.
I feel really neglected. I feel like there's no plan and there's no discussion. It looks like the BC government has completely dropped the ball on pregnant women.
Despite calls from Canada's OBGYNs to vaccinate pregnant people as soon as possible, not all provinces are. Ontario is the latest. Those in other provinces will have to wait unless they have other conditions that put them at risk. But pregnancy in this pandemic is risky, according to a newly published study of 2,000 people around the globe in late pregnancy. Those who got sick with COVID-19 were at a significantly higher risk of complications, including eclampsia, preterm birth, bacterial infections, even maternal death. And 1 in 8 COVID mothers gave birth to a baby that also tested positive.
So I think if there was ever a study supporting potential vaccination in pregnancy, this is it.
The risks, experts believe, are due in part to changes to lung capacity and immune systems during pregnancy. Still, there is some reluctance to put pregnant people at the front of the vaccine line. It may be due in part to the limited amount of research on safety and efficacy, but there is new evidence emerging.
The bottom line is we now have lots of real-world data showing that these are likely to be very, very safe, especially for pregnant individuals in the 2nd and 3rd trimester.
Convincing enough for Alexandra Taylor in PEI, where she can't get a shot.
Any potential effects from the vaccine, I'll take that over getting COVID and ending myself up in the ICU and even potentially dying.
waiting for a shot that may not just save one life, but two. Vic Adopia, CBC News, Toronto.
COVID-19 variants have now shown up in all provinces and territories. They make up more than half of all recently reported cases in our country. But as Hannah Thibodeau reports, vaccines and strong public health measures are helping bring down case counts.
Yeah, I am very excited.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau received his first dose of AstraZeneca, along with his wife. Yay! For Trudeau and others, getting the vaccine is a sign of hope that this pandemic will end.
Yay! There you are.
Canada's chief public health officer says she's optimistic as she looks toward the summer, saying if one dose of the vaccine can get into the arms of at least 75% of adults, and 20% have had 2 doses, that will trigger lifting the most stringent measures.
It could be anywhere, from somewhere in that sort of, mid-July to August kind of time frame. But even then, you have to be cautious and not sort of just lift everything. You're going to lift things in stages and see what happens.
Adding to the tools to get more vaccines into arms, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization lowered the age of eligibility for the AstraZeneca vaccine.
NACI recommends that the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine may be offered to individuals 30 years of age and older.
But the committee added some people may choose to wait to get the mRNA vaccine, like Pfizer or Moderna. More than 1 million doses of AstraZeneca have been administered. 4 cases of rare blood clots have been reported.
People will need to look at how worried they are about COVID, how much COVID there is in the community, whether there's a vaccine available to them now, and if they want to get vaccinated now, how much they are worried about adverse events, because we all are worried about that in a slightly different way.
But the general advice still remains. Take the first vaccine that's offered to you. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Yarmouth, Nova Scotia.
There were 4,500 new COVID infections reported in Ontario today, with more than 800 people in critical care in hospitals, another record high. A number of Toronto hospitals are simply overwhelmed. And as Mike Crawley reports, healthcare workers are having to move patients to less crowded facilities.
This is an intensive care unit inside a bus, a specially equipped ambulance staffed by critical care paramedics from Orange. It's rolling down the 401 toward Kingston, taking the critically ill patients that Toronto area hospitals cannot handle because their ICUs are swamped.
And it is very important that everybody understand what is happening within the walls of these hospitals.
Today alone, 26 critically ill patients are being transferred around Ontario because ICUs are full. The bulk are coming from Scarborough and Brampton. Hospitals as far away as Ottawa, Windsor, Owen Sound and Brockville are taking patients in.
We are deep into wave 3, and we're so worried we're going to hit what happened to New York or Italy now, over a year into this pandemic, when we knew what should have been done a year ago. There's really no excuse for this.
We are seeing younger and younger people get ill and become critically ill.
Since we last spoke to Dr. Andrew Healy on Tuesday, there's been no sign the surge of COVID patients in Brampton is slowing.
I think our numbers continue to rise on a day-by-day basis, and today was another large number. I think we are preparing for things continuing to get worse.
Already this month, more than 700 patients around Ontario have had to be transferred from ICUs that are full. That's nearly triple the number in the entire month of March.
I'm humbled by our staff in the emergency departments, in the critical care units, in the respirology wards, in the COVID wards, the contributions that they bring to the table. We will never be able to thank them enough for that. And we're going to continue to ask more of them every day.
These doctors are among nearly 2,000 calling for vulnerable workers to get paid sick days and vaccines immediately.
The more we wait, the more people will be sick and end up in hospital. And this affects everybody.
If there's one glimmer of good news, although this field hospital at Sunnybrook has been ready to accept patients all week, it has not been needed, at least not yet. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Sidelined due to COVID-19, a BC Lions running back has returned to one of his big passions, art. We're going to talk about the good side of pandemic restrictions with Wayne Moore next.
Good evening, I'm Peter Mansbridge. Tonight on Sunday Report, Francois Mitterrand has won the first round in the French presidential elections. We'll have a report on the Mitterrand victory and the surprisingly strong showing by France's extreme right-wing candidate, Jean-Marie Le Pen. But our top story tonight is from here at home. There are still a lot of unanswered questions about that spectacular shopping mall collapse in Burnaby, British Columbia. Why did it happen? Who, if anyone, is to blame? And will there be a public inquiry? Keith Bogue has been following this story for us, and tonight his report includes some dramatic pictures obtained by CBC News taken at the time the roof collapsed.
Police say more cracks in the building structure showed up overnight, and the site is still considered dangerous. So the whole building has been sealed off. Security guards are posted at every entrance while the damaged areas are shored up. There were hundreds of people in the supermarket yesterday when the roof collapsed. Most of them got out without injury. But one freelance photographer stayed back and took these pictures. In this shot, the ceiling is beginning to sag under the weight of the cars above. Here, an air conditioning duct buckles. Behind it, a steel I-beam is twisted. The pipes break apart and water pours from the ceiling. The beam breaks free and the ceiling begins to come down. In moments, it has collapsed completely. Cars are strewn like toys on the supermarket floor. Even though the plans for the parkade were approved by Burnaby municipal staff, they say responsibility for the structural integrity of the building rests with consulting engineers on the project.
If the designer felt it was safe, the architect, I imagine our staff would have felt it was safe. I don't, beyond that, I don't know if it comes down to workmanship or what.
No official inquiry has been called yet, and engineers say it could be months before they have any idea what happened.
It may be the metal or the wood or the concrete, which is not what it should be. It may be the design is not what it should be. It may be the actual detail and quality of work. It's impossible really to tell, certainly at this stage.
But because the support columns under the roof were left standing, some engineers say that eliminates the possibility they were flawed.
What is wrong is probably in the roof structure itself, whether it be workmanship or design or whatever.
There'll be at least 2 investigations into the accident. Developers who built the supermarket are promising one of their own. But the mayor of Burnaby says the public must be satisfied that any investigation has been thorough, and so he wants an open inquiry. Keith Bogue, CBC News, Vancouver.
Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I'm restricting non-essential travel into or out of all health authority regions in British Columbia, effective immediately.
And that new order restricting travel will stay in place until after the May long weekend, all part of the effort to limit the spread of COVID-19. The province says it's working with police agencies on how to conduct periodic roadside checks. Those caught breaking the rules could be subject to a $575 fine.
I guess this is the right thing that they did. Actually, India is at red zone now, so they should actually ban the flights.
A ban on flights to and from Canada and India and Pakistan is now in effect. Passengers arriving in Vancouver on the last flights out of COVID-ravaged India say the ban is the right thing to do. They describe the situation in India as dire. And the provincial government has canceled a pop-up vaccine clinic planned by an exclusive country club, in West Vancouver. It comes after the club emailed members offering them doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. A local pharmacy was lined up to give members and staff there the jab. Well, the pandemic has given many of us the time to rediscover and tap into hobbies and new interests. But for one BC Lions player, he decided to switch a football for a paintbrush, reconnecting with one of his passions. Here to tell us more about this artwork tonight is CFL running back Wayne Moore. Wayne, thanks for joining us tonight. I want to ask you, first of all, what made you want to get back into creating art?
I would say I definitely dived back into it during the season, the last season in 2019. And my roommates, some of my teammates, they encouraged me to do it, but it's never left me. It's never left me. But just having so much more time on my hands, it's like another way of expression for me.
Yeah, so the pandemic kind of helped rejuvenate things as well?
Definitely, that's for sure.
And where does your inspiration come from?
Many things. It's just everyday life. I don't like to restrict my focus into one particular category. It's just kind of I like to embrace everything, especially my culture. But my main target is to just empower people around me through my art.
And how are you using your artwork to maybe try to uplift the Black community?
For me, I just recently came out with my series, a new series called Royalty. It's a royalty family series, and pretty much, I truly believe that representation in critical spaces is another form of redefining identity. So pretty much for my family, I've done an example for everyone to see, but it's just a way I created some crowns to go on top of our heads, and for us to see it as a way of another form of manifestation, words of affirmation that just kind of empowers us every day. And I know how my kids feel about it and how my family feels about it, so that's what I wanted to spread with everyone else.
And what's been their response? What's people's response to what they see?
A lot of people have really responded to it. A lot of people want some orders as well. I released it Wednesday. I'm going to release it on Wednesday, and I've been getting a lot of good feedback, so I'm looking forward into creating some more.
All right, so let me ask you what happens when football eventually starts up again. I mean, are you going to continue to make art like you're doing now during the pandemic?
100%. I don't feel like they take away from each other. I feel like they actually fuel one another, because it ultimately fuels me with balance, with the physical activity and then my focus in art. I feel balanced. So when the season comes back, I'll definitely continue to paint and create art.
Any advice for others who are, thinking about pursuing their passions, whether it be during the pandemic or outside of that, but maybe you're hesitant to do so?
I feel like whatever you feel to dive back into, whatever you're fearful of, if there was a reason you're fearful of doing it, right now is the best time to do it, because ultimately you have to fuel yourself first before you fuel anything else.
Awesome. Wayne, you've got the best backdrop I think we've seen on this newscast.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Thanks very much, Wayne.
Thank you. Take care. Blessings and love.
He has always been a fan of open diving and the treasures that lie on the bottom of the ocean. So when Andrew Chin moved to BC from Singapore, he took to the ocean. The challenges deep below, coming next. And at 6:43, a live shot across the North Shore from downtown Vancouver tonight. A dull day on the South Coast, but we did have quite the stretch for sure. Johanna's weekend forecast is next, and if you haven't already brought in the outdoor furniture cushions, you might want to get on it. We'll be right back.
We keep track of our time on this planet based on what material we have to build with. So you've all heard of the Stone Age, the Bronze Age. We live currently in the Plastic Age. Every year, over 340 million metric tons of plastics are produced.
Nowadays, you hear in the news a lot about banning plastics. Plastic is really a miracle material, and it was created to solve a lot of other problems. It's, what made people able to afford things. People need clean supplies and drugs that they can rely on. So for the plastics that we do need to depend on, how can we turn that into a circular model so that after their valuable use is not just going to landfills or going to our environment?
So what we've invented is a new technology that can break down these currently unrecyclable plastics. We make building blocks from them, and from there, with these building blocks, we've also managed to develop ways to build back up with them.
Johanna Wagstaffe back with us now. Okay, I brought in the furniture cushion. Well, maybe I had help with that. They're inside. The plants do need, I'm just trying to stay positive about this change that we're experiencing.
I think that's the best attitude. Yes, you have to move the patio cushions in, but everything is getting a bit dry. So yeah, there's definitely a glass half full with about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain half full in the forecast for the weekend. Take a look at the forecast across the province. I think it's interesting that this low pressure system is sneaking across basically the US-Canada border, which means central and northern BC actually get to keep summer for a bit longer. Now, they had a few cold fronts before we did, but 10 in through Prince George tomorrow, 16 over towards Prince Rupert. A beautiful forecast. Maybe the west side of Haida Gwaii picking up a few showers. Dease Lake at a 10, and that forecast will hold through the weekend and into early next week. But meanwhile, look down towards Kelowna and Cranbrook, where rain is in the forecast for most of the weekend. As far as how much, I mentioned 10 to 20 millimeters. It will be steady at times through the day, seen more towards the North Shore, of course, and out towards the valley. But a general 10 to 20 millimeters should help with how dry things have been. And fire danger is high across much of the southern interior. Temperatures tomorrow below seasonal for most of southern BC, at least by a couple of degrees. We do recover a little bit as we head into Sunday, and that goes for Vancouver as well. We had an 11 tomorrow as our high, back up to a 13 or a 14 for Sunday, and that is our seasonal high based on our 30-year average anyway. And I actually see us warming up quite a bit more as we head into early next week. Not a return to July-August weather, but we get through the Saturday rain that will linger through Sunday. And because the center of low is over top of us on Sunday, not out of the question that we might get a stray thunderstorm and some hail coming down. Sunshine back for Monday and Tuesday. It looks like we get a midweek blip, and then I was looking at the forecast past Wednesday, and some high teen temperatures, not out of the question, and we'll get it in sort of 1 to 2 day doses. So I'll keep you posted.
All right.
We all, of course, have, as we think about cooking this weekend, have home-cooked dishes from our childhood that make us a little nostalgic. For me, it's anything with paprika. But one man goes into greater depths, shall we say, to get a taste of home.
Yes, Andrew Chin is a free diver who searches the open water for fresh crab, which he cooks. Excuse me, I'm getting starving here. My mouth's getting dry. He cooks it up into a traditional Singaporean dish, which is apparently fantastic. This is the Crab Diver from the Creator Network.
So I got into diving about 4 years ago while I was living in Hawaii. So transitioning into diving into Canada was definitely a learning process in itself. My face was frozen and the visibility was horrible. It's a lot more difficult to actually see underwater and find what you're trying to harvest. I wanted to kind of make something from our family's culture, because most of my relatives live in Singapore, and I wanted to do it kind of to explore and relearn my culture in some ways. You know, Singapore is such a melting pot of cultures and people groups and nationalities, and with that, they all bring their cuisines, and chili crab is one of these things that everybody knows is a Singaporean dish. For me, making chili crab, I think, is a way for me to kind of rediscover where I come from and my heritage and my culture. So I reached out to my aunt from Singapore and asked her, you know, how do you make it? With most Singaporean dishes, there's so many different versions and iterations, and everybody has their own take. I wanted to keep it, you know, super simple and not overcomplicated, and really let the ingredients speak for themselves. And you want to get the freshest crab you can, you know, break that down, clean it. You also need your rumpa, which is going to be the paste that is going to be the base of your sauce. And it's made usually with chilies and garlic, shallots, and ginger. And people do it different ways. Some people will fry the crab, some people will steam it or braise it. I like to cook the crab in the sauce and just allow everything to get to know each other. And traditionally, you're going to use a mud crab, like a Sri Lankan mud crab. But here in Canada, we're going to be using Dungeness, which is something that's super fresh and available to us locally. I would love to, you know, once it's safe and we're allowed to kind of meet and gather with each other, to make Singaporean chili crab for my relatives who have moved here from Singapore, and to see if it's something that really reminds them of home.
Yum, yum. Okay, in honor of Earth Day, Johanna and her son decided to make some improvised bird feeders. Why Wesley wasn't too keen on giving it to the birds. Joe is next.
My name is Brian, aka MC Snacks. I'm a musician from here in Newfoundland, and I also do a bit of turntablism, as they call it. Turntablism, we use that word, and all it means is to use turntables in a mixer as a musical instrument. So instead of just playing music as a DJ, you're actually using the equipment to make your own new music. When I was like a teenager, DJs and everything were in commercials and stuff like that, and I was always fascinated with it, but in particularly, I was obsessed with like the scratching. The legendary story of how like scratching was discovered was, New York DJ, Grand Wizard Theodore, was actually practicing in his room, and his mom called out to him, so he stopped the record. He was practicing DJing, and this is before scratching was really a thing. And he noticed when he stopped the record, he stopped it during a sound, and it made a scratch noise. He said, "Oh, that sounded really cool." So he ended up incorporating that into his DJ sets, and then turntablism was born. The vinyl that we use, there's nothing special about how the record is made. It's just like the records you might have at home. But a lot of times we use break records that actually have sound effects or drum loops for the sole purpose of scratching. So the crossfader is, the fader usually at the bottom of the mixer that goes left to right, and that actually fades in between the left and the right turntable. Eventually, people said, "Oh, well, a guitar player or a saxophone player will use multiple fingers." So DJs started using multiple fingers on the crossfader, doing a technique we call the crab scratch. It just keeps evolving and evolving. Turntablism, it seems like it has waves, it ebbs and flows as far as how popular it is in culture. Like these days it isn't as popular as it used to be, but there are, diehards like me who are just obsessed with scratching, and just would never let it go. We'll practice, until our fingers are numb.
Okay, yesterday, of course, was Earth Day, and for you, Joe, it's a family affair.
Yes, that is true. My 2-year-old son, Wesley, and I decided to take a household reusable item and give back to nature in the form of a bird feeder, and there were only a few toddler meltdowns. Take a look.
Okay, so today we're going to make our own bird feeder because today is Earth Day. What planet do we live on? Planet Earth. I thought we would make something so that we can appreciate all the animals around us. So all you need is a toilet paper roll. And what we're gonna do, let me just explain it to you first. We're gonna cover this in peanut butter, and then we're gonna roll it in here, and then we're going to use string and hang it on a tree. And put it on here. But I love this. What do you think they're gonna do when they see it? And eat it all up. What we've got to do now is roll it in the seeds back and forth. Can you do that? Yeah. What would we normally do with this toilet paper roll? Would we throw it out? Give it to birds. Exactly. Give it to the birds instead. We don't put it in garbage. We don't put it in the garbage. We reuse it. We think of new ways to use things. Now it's time to put a ribbon through it. Hang it. I'm going to stick this through here. Can you grab the other end? It's coming. It's coming. Can you grab it? Okay, should we go hang it on a tree now? Yes. I carry this out, Mommy. What tree should we hang it on? On here. Birds will come. And then we can watch the birds and we can make notes and draw pictures of what kind of birds come to visit.
And other birds come to visit.
That's right. And then when in 30 years those same birds don't come anymore because the climate's too warm, we'll always have a record of who came.
Happy Earth Day!
Happy Earth Day!
I love it. Love the slipper. Were those slippers or sandals or what?
They were my slippers, his footwear of choice, yes.
Yeah, a lot going on there. Climate change, recycling, nature.
I packed it all in.
And you've still got some remnants of the said bird feeder?
Yes, I wanted, if anyone's going to try this at home, disclaimer, this isn't the kind of activity you hang outside, especially if you're in Bear County. This is the kind of bird feeder you hang up, run to the window, and watch the birds and the squirrels devour it in about 4 minutes and rapidly take notes. Yeah, I had to pick up the pieces of cardboard from around the tree. Hey, it's easier to recycle once it's been shredded.
Yeah.
So, note to anyone trying it at home. This is a rapid craft exercise.
So it's not out there for long. Well done.
Yes.
Thanks, Joe. Have a great weekend.
You too.
You too. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Dan's here at 11 after the National. Have a great weekend.
Good night.